Greetings to all of you who are joining us tonight. We're talking on a topic that seems to interest of many people today in the quest of having good health. And our show tonight is dealing to prosper and be in good health. We're fortunate to have some people, some friends, some longtime friends that have a wide experience in dealing with good health and prosperity, and have been educators of lifestyle principles. And Dr. Frank and Rosie Hurd from Minnesota, and we welcome you. We thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight. And
glad to be here with you, John.
Thank you for inviting us, John.
You have been advocates of lifestyle programs for a long time, and what exactly is lifestyle programming as far as education, and what are you advocating?
Well, I guess our program that we've been advocating goes back quite a few years. We're vegetarians, of course, and being that I became a vegetarian when I was 9 years old, I've been really excited about getting other people, all my friends, everybody I knew or met, into a little better lifestyle. And of course, today, we may not believe this, but 2/3 of the world are still vegetarian. And that's encouraging because in a country such as ours, where there's so many vegetarians, you might say, under the surface, they say there's probably 3 million people here in the United States. If you took a poll, they would say they're vegetarian. But now, along with that, the lifestyle that we're looking at would include a lot of other basic things, like getting proper amount of exercise, drinking a proper amount of water per day, of course, along with eating good food and getting proper rest, and of course, not least of all those, have some trust in divine power. And so this is kind of a lifestyle that we have to become aware of. It's out there for us, and instead of just coasting along and trying to determine what life is all about, we think we can offer a pretty positive approach to life, so you can live long and happy and not succumb to all the stresses that we are finding ourselves in.
Rosalie, you are a nutritionist, and you deal with the kitchen end of it, and you help a lot of people through giving cooking demonstrations. You have a burden that way.
Yes, actually, John, we started with our family. We have 5 children. And it was a challenge raising them. We wanted to give them the very best food that we knew how to serve them and give them a good, healthy start in life. And so we trained them to choose the proper dietary. We encourage them to eat simple food, nothing between the meals, lots of fresh fruit, lots of vegetables, and we would make our own homemade bread. So they got a good, healthy start in life. And it was challenging because as they were growing up, we, of course, homeschooled the children, but they would go out sometimes and people would offer them candy. And I can remember my little girl, she had an accident and was in the hospital for a while, and the nurses would offer her ice cream and candy and cake, and on her own she would say no thank you. She didn't want that. And they couldn't imagine this this young child, you know, refusing all these wonderful goodies. But I feel that a way of life is something that a person decides to do because they really see the benefit of it and they really want to adopt that style of a life. And not just something that you put on Sunday, you know, or one day a week. It becomes part of you. Like today, I mean, I was a big cheese eater, and today it doesn't bother me to not, you know, use cheese. I used to go by these shops when I was a young girl where they would sell smoked pastrami. Do you know how smoked pastrami smells? It smells pretty good. But, you know, I could walk by that now and it doesn't faze me in the least. So you become convinced as you live the lifestyle, you become convinced that this is the better way, and the other things don't bother you. Someone could walk by me with a piece of candy or a Coke, and I don't even have any desire for it.
I gather, have been vegetarian for a good amount of time.
Over 50 years.
As a youth, you were in a family that used meat and...
No, actually, my parents, my mother was a very excellent cook, John. She was a fruit and vegetable cook.
Okay.
And we didn't have junk food. My dad would sometimes think it was a treat to bring home ice cream, and once in a while he'd bring home one of these Almond Joy, you know, or chocolate bars, and we would have to eat it with a piece of bread. We couldn't have it plain. It'd have to be with bread. That was sort of the custom at our table. But we would crack nuts and eat fresh fruit, you know, things like that. We didn't have a lot of junk food, no. In fact, my parents, both growing up in Italy, were quite poor as children. And I remember my mother stating where they would just have, you know, pasta for dinner and maybe some bread and a very simple fare and salad. So they didn't have a lot of these foods that we are, you know, used to seeing today on the table. Every scrap of food was used and appreciated.
Today, it seems like we live in a rush society, and we, as a society in America, we frequent the McDonald's and the other places because they're convenient. And what do you think this has had to do with, as far as America's health and people not preparing food so much? And how do you look at that? Is that good, or is that bad, or could it be better? Or
Well, usually the dietary that people get involved with is sort of related to how they're living. You know, if they're living at a very fast pace. And today we have a lot of young ladies that just are career-oriented, and they're not too concerned about cooking. And so what happens, of course, you have these fast food service areas like Hardee's and McDonald's and others that they're providing the meals. And unfortunately, being that there's such a high fat, 29-30% fat, we're not recommending that kind of a dietary because of all the secondary effects like arteriosclerosis, and we have heart disease, and we have diabetes, and we have all these chronic subacute problems increasing instead of decreasing. And we feel that there's a direct proportion or relationship to the increase of using these kind of fast foods as they've come along, and you can see the increase of chronic disease going up. And while the drug medications and various other prescriptions that we're dispensing to the people are not seeming to solve those problems, we still have a continuous rise of incidence. So there has to be something that has to be looked at and dealt with. Otherwise, we're just going to keep escalating in the same trend that we're seeing today.
Another thing that comes to mind as a society as a whole in America, we're becoming more and more sedentary. We're letting the machines do the work. And back 50 years ago, more and more people are in the country and on the farm. And you're pretty enthusiastic about country lifestyle and working gardens and outdoors and nature and exercise. And how's that play into lifestyle improvement?
Well, I think it plays into it considerably because obviously if you take even, say, 50 years ago, and I can remember that very well because we're both past 60 ourselves, we don't feel that old. I don't know how you're supposed to feel at 60, but I mean, I still like gardening, and we still walk 5 miles a day if we want to, and without any problem doing it, you see. But and we take time to do the things that represent exercise. And of course, a lot of other things go along with that. You know, you have to have a certain amount of water. You know, we don't have pop in our house. We just don't drink it. So basically speaking, we have a lot of water pollution on the big scale, you know, where we have our rivers and lakes and various things polluted. And the DNRs will tell you that you can only have so many fish out of this lake or that lake. But basically, at our tables, we're drinking polluted water too. We either got tea or coffee or pop or soda or Kool-Aid or or some other chocolate or whatever else people drink, and very seldom do they consistently drink just water as a as a liquid. You know, the body has to filter all these other pollutants that we take at our table.
What do you call it? Adam's champagne? Is that what you call it?
Adam's ale.
Adam's ale. That's
There you
right. Yeah, it's in doing your cooking classes, you emphasize a lot of different things that are unusual. I mean, not unusual anymore. It seems like a lot of people are taking the methods and programs that you're advocating back in '68 when you first printed your book 10 Talents, and of fruits in their natural state, and grains and nuts and vegetables. You have been giving cooking classes for a long time. Why did you call your book 10 Talents?
Well, that's a good question, John, and I might just read that right from the front cover. You know, back in 1968, vegetarianism was not that popular, but we had a desire to help others know, you know, the better lifestyle, and so together we decided to do this volume. And we had read a statement in this wonderful book, Diet and Foods, written by Ellen White, and she says, "The one who understands the art of properly preparing food and who uses this knowledge is worthy of higher commendation than those engaged in any other line of work. This talent should be regarded as equal in value to 10 talents, for its right use has much to do with keeping the human organism in health. Because so inseparably connected with life and health, it is the most valuable of all the gifts." So that just tells us how important the work of the mother and the cook is. In fact, she says here on page 251, "I prize my seamstress, I value my copyist, but my cook, who knows well how to prepare the food to sustain life and nourish brain, bone, and muscle, fills the most important place among the helpers in my family." So that's pretty important, isn't it?
Yes.
And I feel the mother's place in the home and as the homemaker is extremely important because she can actually make or break her family's health. But you know, today a lot of women don't like to cook. My husband has a little chuckle. Do you remember how that goes?
Well, back years ago,
Men leave home.
they used to have a little thing in Reader's Digest, and it was a little chuckle that said that the reason why most men were leaving home was because they had wives that knew how to cook but wouldn't. And also the other class was that they had wives that knew how to cook but didn't. And so,
Wives who didn't know how to cook but did.
But did. They are the wives who didn't know how to cook but did. So today we have to say that chuckle should be changed. Now there's more women leaving home than men. And so we say, well, now the reason why they're leaving home is because the men haven't learned how to cook yet. So we advocate that in our program that men get involved. Matter of fact, we'll often have them come up in our demonstrations and they'll make bread or they'll put together some recipes, and we encourage that just as much as we do with the women. I think every young man today should learn how to cook just to be on the safe side, because we have career gals that are very nice, but they just don't have any interest in doing that cooking thing, you know. It takes a little time. But I was interested in a thought here too. When we put 10 Talents together back in the 60s, we'd been teaching nutrition for probably 10 or more years, and everybody kept asking us for some kind of a practical guide that they could use so that it would make it a little simple for them. So actually, you know, anything we do, if it's not practical, it's almost useless. You know, you can get an education and all that, but if it's not related to some practical thing you can see accomplished, then it's just something in your head and it's not being translated very well. So we found, after putting this all together, that the Library of Congress picked it twice for the blind, for the embossed for the blind and also the Braille. So this is available for the blind to use. And, you know, they based it on the simplicity and the practicality of the recipes because it's just natural food. You know, it isn't a whole lot of complicated recipes. There's no sugar in the book. Now, we don't feel that sugar is your friend. If you want to look at it as a food, we would encourage you to look upon it as an addiction because it's so refined, there's nothing in nature that comes close to it. So we don't advocate eating sugar. See? And of course the recipes are without a lot of oil. It's a low fat. There's some oil in the recipe, but the point remains is in this country we live in today, we all know that we're eating way too many fried foods and fat foods, and of course the sugar consumption, you know, today per person is up to like 135, 40 pounds a year. Now take that against what we're not eating. We haven't had a pound of sugar in our house for over 40 years. So, you know, it doesn't balance out to good nutritional progress for us.
Does that have any relationship to seemingly a lot of diabetes and blood sugar difficulties today?
Well, I think it does. I think it definitely does. I think the diet plays a big factor because you can go to countries that we think are third world, or we call them aborigines because they're not into the mainstream of our American civilized way of thinking, and they don't have sugar in their diet, and they have no heart disease, and they have no diabetes. Well, no, that's the extreme, of course, but nevertheless, if we would just eliminate sugar from our diet and say cut the fat down to where instead of 29%, let's make it less than 5 or 7, something like that, I think we could eliminate a major portion of our problems, you see. But as you can see, with today's census being taken in the health index, the World Health Organization doesn't rate the United States very high in its health accomplishments. Matter of fact, we're on the lowest totem pole. And yet we have the most facility, we have the most doctors per population, and we dispense the most drugs and all these things. But you see, this is not the answer. The drug picture I'm not talking about street drugs, I'm talking about prescription drugs now. They are not the most valuable way to get well. They're good for emergencies. If you have an emergency, fine. But the expedient thing you have to live with is not really the drug. You see, that should be, like Edison said many years ago, the doctors of the future will use food for their medicine. See? And of course, sometimes we forget the second part of that. He said that they should take the drugs and dump them into the sea, but he said, I pity the poor fish. So instead of that, we're consuming all these drugs, and so I pity the poor people. And so what our lifestyle involves is we're trying to reverse this to a point where we can say to you, if you came to the office, well, now, we're here to take care of your sickness, but you're there to take care of your health. See? We can't take care of your health. And we don't want to see you too long because we don't think you have to be sick that long. See? So what does that involve? See, that involves getting back to some basic nutrition, number one, because I don't know of too many cars that don't run on gas. You know, you run out of gas, you're going to stop. Well, the human body's the same way. You don't want to run out of fuel, and it's best to know what kind of fuel your body needs. And of course, we feel that that's back to the original diet that God gave man in the first place. You can take the scriptures. If you didn't know anything about nutrition, just read the first book of Genesis, and it would tell you what we're supposed to eat. Now, if you were simple enough to believe that and to practice it, well, you'd be way healthy, you see. And I guess that's kind of where we're saying this is what we're looking at. And it's not up to matter to say, well, does this fit my religion? No, that's immaterial, really. Because we have to recognize the fuel we exist on is going to determine how healthy we are. And the fact that we're eating the way we are, and there's a proven relationship. You can pick up any magazine today, any newspaper, and you'll find all kinds of studies being done and telling you all about it. But you see, what happens at that level, you see, it's just news. It's just news. When we read the news, we throw the paper away and we forget it, you see. So it was a nice study, but it doesn't really get applied. It doesn't get applied to what we should be doing. See? So with this book, 10 Talents now, we say here's how you can apply the natural foods, make them tasty and palatable and attractive looking, so there shouldn't be any excuse now that you should be able to eat and enjoy it, and enjoy health as well. Okay.
There's a scripture that comes to mind that God has made man upright, but man has sought out many inventions. And why can't we, as a society, get it together? As far as the reason seems pretty basic, that you break things down and tear them apart, you're going to lose a lot. And what is the motivation behind all the food that's around? Why it isn't vital and why it isn't good for us?
Well, it's pretty easy to see what's transpired over the past 40, 50 years. We're into what we call a marketable product. And the nutritional part of it is not the major reason why it's being marketed. It's being marketed because there's some livelihoods involved with the making of the financial structure that goes with it as a business. And of course, you know, ripe fruit and ripe vegetables don't travel that well, and they don't keep that long. So obviously they're going to be harvested green, oftentimes, unripened, I should say. And of course you're not going to get the benefit of what's really there for you, see? And the other thing too, they're going to be sprayed with different pesticides because organic gardening has not been that big in our country. It's coming up, it's improving. And of course you have foods that have been grown in the same soil for a number of years, and there's a depletion. So you're not getting all from the soil that you should have in those foods, see? So obviously that's probably the main reason why we have the food in the condition it's in. Now obviously in every big community, say 25, 30,000 people, you will find health food stores or natural food stores, organic produce stores, and they have these things, so they're available. They're available.
It's quite different. It's been on upswing for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
You've been one of the good promoters, strong promoters of it. Is it turning around? Are we going to get on top of it, or well, how do you feel about that?
I think so, John. I think more and more people are interested today in health and vegetarianism and good food. I think so. You know, we do a lot of traveling, and it's a lot easier now to get a vegetarian meal versus a few years ago.
I'm someone at home who hasn't had, let's say, in our mind's eye, who hasn't had much experience with natural lifestyle, cooking, and principles. I've lived a standard American diet and so forth, and I can see that it's, you know, I have my aches and pains and have my indigestion, and I can see that it's something that would do me well. And as far as the cooking end, a lot of people think that whole foods and grains and so forth, they think that it takes a long time, that it's too much work, and that it's just not practical. Is that true, or how do you experience?
Not really. I'm a very busy person. I don't spend much time in the kitchen at all. And you find shortcuts. You find ways of doing things to prepare a meal, like sprouting. We showed last night at our class how you can prepare a vegetarian meatless dish in just 2 minutes by using the sprouted legumes or by using tofu. If you make bread, you can make it once a week and freeze it. You can cook your cereals at night in a crock pot, and in the morning they're all ready to eat. There's just a number of things you can do to save time.
Sprouting's a really conducive thing to
it. It is. It's unique. I just love to sprout. It's so much fun.
Well, what's the, how much do seeds, grains gain? What's the exact, you probably studied when, you know, they say it's kind of super packed nutrition. There are some places throughout the country that are advocating sprouts and wheatgrass for even helping people get over cancer. What is it when something sprouts that it just becomes more vital and more available to the body? And
it does. We have a table in 10 Talents where it shows how in wheat sprouts, when they're sprouted, how everything just multiplies from anywhere from 2 to 20 times.
Now that's true. When you sprout a grain or you sprout a legume, the vitamin content goes up considerably. The enzyme activity is in place, and of course we feel that's very important to help digest the foods other foods you do eat, see? A lot of folks are not into eating a lot of things raw.
Yeah.
But now there has been a change a lot of the young people are wanting raw things now. See, it says there's probably 15 million people. If you ask them if they would like to know more about the vegetarian diet or like to eat more vegetarian foods, they'd say definitely yes to that. See? So to me, that's encouraging, because I can tell you that 10, 15 years ago, if you ask the same question, you only get 4 million people respond. But now you're getting 15, 16 million people responding to that. Well, that's still a small number, but on the whole, what segment of our population is responding to this? It's mostly young people. See? And the 15-year-old teenager is probably the worst diet of anybody in the country, because they want to stay, especially the girls, they want to stay slender, and they don't want to, look like they're going to ever gain weight, and so they either go without or they'll go with something much less than their nutritional requirements require, and so they're very malnourished. And if you took a consensus of our population today versus, say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there was some study that said that our overall population in the United States, up to 40% would be put in what we call a malnourished category. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to be extremely malnourished, but it's going to have some degree of malnourishment. Well, now, I think that number today is probably a little higher than that. I really do, because I don't see that we're getting the proper balance in our nutritional intake. Obesity now, but just by itself, is evidence that that person is being poorly nourished. They're getting lots of food, but they're not getting the kinds of food that's really nourishing. Because if they were getting the proper nourishment, they would not be overweight. See?
The nourishment, what we take in for nutrition, we were earlier listening to you talk to someone there today, and how it affects their behavior, and we were sharing with somebody earlier today in Wisconsin about sugar, and
I was sharing with someone I was talking with there today that in Michigan there's a correctional institution for boys. They had like 150 boys aged between 14 and 18 years old, and they were just having so many correctional incidents during the day, that 14, 16, 18, 20 different occasions every day, that they had to bring these young folks in and help them see that, managing their behavior. And somehow the director, either on 20 Minutes or one of the TV programs, saw where somebody had mentioned that nutrition was really able to affect behavior, and especially the vegetarian diet. And so this lady called up a food supplier and said, well, we'd like to buy your food, but we don't have any idea how to cook it. So if you can find us a couple of cooks for a month, we'll be very interested in making some changes here just to see how it works. So they were able to find a couple of cooks for them, and they went over for a month and taught their entire kitchen staff how to prepare natural foods. And after the first month, they were down to something like 3 or 4 correctional problems a day. And after a couple of months, they got down to only 1, and within 3 months, they didn't have any problem at all. And the young people were coming along asking if they could go to school or if they could get involved with something, or they were interested now in learning something, and their whole mindset changed. So they were no longer a behavioral problem.
And the basic thing they did was eliminate the refined sugars from the diet.
There's no sugar in the dietary of the vegetarian natural foods. That's automatically eliminated thing. And you take your attention deficit disorders, same problem. You'll find in most of those cases there's a high sugar intake, see, or a lot of Cokes and Pops and various other things that have a lot of sugar in them. And I know in our practice we manage those cases without sugar and pop and all these other things, and they do rather well. They do rather well. So we can tell you from that experience, over 35 years in practice, I can tell you all kinds of stories of how dietary has made a big difference with the patients, especially their children.
You've seen a lot of people throughout the years.
Oh, of course.
Of course. And does anything stick out in your mind on one particular radical turnaround of case history with a person that has come in and they followed your recommendations? And
there'd be just too numerous to mention. Pretty hard to pick one out and isolate it. There's we think of one young lady that she was like 8 or 9 years old and wasn't very well coordinated, couldn't even ride a bicycle. And changing her dietary around and giving her a few treatments, she was able to be normal again, you might say. Like most kids could ride bicycles, and her coordination was improved and thing. We had another young boy, attention deficit disorder, 8 years old. By the time it came Thursday, he was just getting his act together in school, where he could sit and concentrate long enough to know what the teacher was doing. But from Sunday to Thursday, he was just about out of it, see? And he had one good day of school on Friday. So the teacher, I guess, sent the parent a note, and the parent brought the child to our clinic, and just discovering what he was eating. We recommended a complete dietary change for that young fella. And the teacher later wrote us a note thanking us for what was accomplished, because he was a totally different child. And his problem just disappeared in a few weeks, just eating the right kinds of food with no medications, you see. And eventually he was able to get off the Ritalin, which he was on at the time we saw him. See? So there's examples of this that are, and I'm sure we're not the only people that's seen these examples, you know, really played out.
Today we're thinking about a tribe in the Himalayas that they live to be long, or commonly over 100 years old, I guess, the Hunzas, and they have a valley where they're farming people, and they also are a simple people. What's your impressions on the Hunzas, and what are they doing right? What can we learn from them?
Well, you know, that's interesting, because when I was in grade school, I was a very avid reader, and I came on this volume on the rise and fall of the British Empire. It was like 13 little volumes, you know, small prints. I left it till last, okay? And being I was about 9 years old, when I finished reading that set of works, I decided I'd become a vegetarian because of the Hunza people who lived to be up to 140, 150 years old. And they were vegetarian and lived a simple lifestyle. Of course, now their environment is a little different than some, but not unlike some people who still live in the States. They had no electricity and no modern conveniences, no industrial complications, of pure air and pure water. And they had to go to town 25, 30 miles. They'd walk, you see. And I can remember as a kid, we used to walk 5 miles to town, sometimes twice a day. Never think anything of it, because that's the thing we had to do. You know, it was just normal, natural. So when I became a vegetarian, I said, now that's good for me. I think I'd like to live to be 140. A lot of people wouldn't agree with me today because there's so many things going on. Who'd want to put up with everything that's going on for 140 years? But that's not the issue. The issue is, if you can be healthy and well, why not take 140 years, you know, as a goal? And so that's what I did. And I'm telling you, you know, we're 60. We're only kids yet. We've got a long ways to go. We've got 80 more years ahead of us, you know, that look just as good as they are today. And I think that a lot of these things that are in the third world areas and Hunza land and different South American countries and the Georgia section of Russia there, used to be Russia, and these people have a long life because of the simplicity of their diet. And there's no refined foods there. You can't get sugar there. You can't get very many oils there, you see. You have to just on the natural fruits and vegetables and the homemade breads they make. And of course it's hard work, pure water, and there's no electricity, so you can't stay up all night. You have to go to bed when the birds do, you know, which
That's a blessing.
Which is just the way it ought to be, you know. So those kind of things are happening even today. Those people are still there, and they're still living to be over 100 years old without any cavities in their teeth. They've got all their teeth, and there's no jails, there's no hospitals, there's no police stations. I mean, you know, there's none of these things that we think are necessary for a safe society. Everybody owns a 5-6 acre plot of ground. They raise their own food, so nobody wants anything anybody else has, because if they do, they got to take care of it, see? And so, you know, it isn't like it is in this country at all. But some of these principles that they live by could be very stimulating for us to make changes from. Because we could see, you know, if you don't have to ever go to a doctor, and I had a patient 104 years old, and she hadn't been to a doctor twice since she was 50. And I was the second doctor she went to. She was a vegetarian from the time she was 50 years old. She was sick numerous times before. And when she became a vegetarian, she no longer was sick. Never needed a doctor again. See? I think there's a lot of people in the western part of the state, Montana here, in North and South Dakota. They probably haven't traveled too many miles all their lives. They're 89 to 100 years old. How many times do they go to the doctor? I'm not advocating they don't go to the doctor. I'm saying they should go to the doctor and get their checkups, you see, but at the same time, know that they're living on the right kind of fuel that's going to keep them relatively healthy. And that's the issue we're talking about here. We're trying to stimulate folks to get involved with a better lifestyle so that they don't have to experience a lot of stress. You know, it isn't like which came first, the chicken or the egg, stress or circumstance, you see, or your reaction. No, I think if we live healthy, we don't have to be involved with a whole lot of stress.
Reading the scriptures in Leviticus and God's original plan for Israel, which was to be a model nation for the world, which they sometimes measured up to, and many times they failed. But one of his commandments or injunctions was that the land be split up evenly throughout the country and divided equally. And it couldn't, of course, be bartered away every 50 years, it returned back to the original owner. It was his desire, don't you think, that people be an agrarian country, agrarian society? Today in the United States, you look at where we've gone the last 50, 100 years. Back in the 20s, there was still a great portion of the population on the land, over 30%, I think. I'm not quite sure of my statistics, but what is it? Why don't we learn? You know, why do we keep on getting away from, you know, into the busyness of the towns and cities and the rat race and highways and you know, you probably agrees you when you look at the way metropolitan areas are increasing. And
yeah, I think we're in a very what should I say? We're in a very stressed society today, because we do have a lot of people moving from the country into the cities to find employment, or to find what we call the good life. See, and basically we are just by our disposition very dependent upon the country, especially for our food, and especially for quietness. You know, it's pretty hard to say, well, I can get used to the noise, but the noise is there. And you know, we don't understand always how quiet it is out in so we go camping or out on some backpack trip, and all you hear is the birds sing and wolves howl and those things. You know, that's a foreign noise to a lot of people. They don't understand those noises. You know, they used to hear the buses and the sirens and all the rest. And that does have an effect upon our system, our nervous system by itself. They brought up a good point, too, that about getting back to the farm. We wouldn't advocate everybody go back to the farm. Our society would stand still for a while if we did that. But we still are advocating that from the farm should come properly raised food products, so they can keep us city dwellers happy and healthy, see. But because of such a demand, and because of the inability to keep everything fresh as possible, see, we're willing to sacrifice and have the farmer now get involved with a lot of pesticides and commercial fertilization to make a bigger crop, to make a bigger profit, and so on and so forth. So we've really gotten the farmer all confused now. He doesn't know whether he's a farmer or a chemical dispenser. You know, I mean, basically that's what it amounts to, because all the cows, the beef cattle, they're being fed all kinds of things. The chickens are being fed all kinds of things. You know, we've got to get this thing moving, because these people in the city now have to have more product and faster product, see? And
convenience.
And so it's a vicious cycle, see, that we find ourselves. So if somebody has the initiative or the desire to go out in the country and get a little piece of land and plant your own garden and do it organically, I mean, it's going to be like a little savings on your checkbook when it comes to your medical needs, because your health will be improved, you see. And plus you get the exercise that you need, and a lot of things will change. So I'd like to see a lot of this barren plains that we drive by here in Montana and all around the western part of the states, get some smaller cities started. Let's get a group from bigger cities moving out and getting something going. You know, why keep getting the cities bigger and more complicated and more compromised with our health? See? And that's not being too radical. That's just a good thought, you know.
Well, if you were a dictator of the world, I often think of this. here I am, a beneficent dictator of the world, you know, and it has people's good totally at heart. If you had that position, what would you implicate?
Well, I've told this to people, and just in passing, I said if they made me president of the United States, which of course will never happen, I'm not even looking for the job, but if they just accidentally did that, drafted me in there, I'd make a law the first day and sign it that nobody could eat sugar. And I think probably 2 or 3 days later, the people would be so upset they'd impeach me and I'd get back to my work again, see? So I don't think a leadership position is a very enviable one when it comes to turning things around and getting things back on track health-wise. Because we do have a lot of financial influences that are negative to that. Because we have a lot of medicines that need to be dispensed, need to be sold. We have large corporations that are invested in the stocks of these various drug companies and whatnot. So it would be very difficult for a leader of any country today to say, hey, we're going to go back to healthful living and get the right thing done. There would be some opposition there.
Yeah, the
There'd
slave
be some vetoes there.
The slave trade actually got started in the sugar industry. They started transporting the black people out of Africa to work those Jamaican islands and Caribbean, and that was all for the sugar cane, you know.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we have too much sugar in this country, no question about it.
That sounds kind of radical, though. No sugar. Can a person be moderate? He'll be a lot better off.
Well, moderation, of course, is the way to go. Of course, we know that in advocating a better lifestyle, we say, well, there's no tobacco, there's no alcohol, you see, and there's no drugs like marijuana, various other heroin, various other drugs, the street drugs are increasing, of course. And right along with that, we'd have to say that there should be a definite, drastic reduction in the amount of drug prescriptions that people are getting, you see. It would all have to follow suit. You couldn't say, well, you can't do this one, you can't do that one. It would all have to follow suit so that we complete our lifestyle to the point where we can say, hey, I'm in charge of my health now as an individual. See? And the doctor can do his job much more efficiently because he'll have less disease to take care of. And he'll have a right way of looking at it so that the person on the other end receiving his medication can say, hey, now I've got a handle on my lifestyle here so I can work with this, you see. So that's what we advocate. And you know, that's in demand today. People are traveling all over the country to find these places that do that. Because they want to be in charge of their health, but never have had to even think about it.
Rosalie, when a person might be watching who maybe sees the need of, they have a lot of sugar in their diet, what can you recommend how they might adjust their lifestyle to, so they probably like sweet things. What can a person do at home to take on natural perspective that will get away from refined sugar and that way of life?
That's a good question, John, because I feel that the Lord does not withhold any good thing from us. All good things and all perfect things come from above. And it seems like for every good thing, Satan has a counterfeit. And I think sugar is one of those. The Bible speaks of honey. In fact, it's mentioned many times in the Bible. Honey, natural raw honey. And we have in the front of our book a glossary that gives the description of a lot of these natural foods, and one of those is honey. And it brings out the benefits of natural, raw, unclarified, uncooked, unstrained honey. And honey is twice as sweet as sugar. There's sugar in fruit, natural fruit, peaches, pears, oranges, grapes. Even grapefruit has a certain amount of sugar in it. And when you eat an abundant variety of these wonderful foods that God has given us, with a little bit of honey in moderation, you just don't miss sugar. It's not like we're taking something away, but we're giving them so much more. There's so much more.
Things like date sugar, too.
Dates are sweet, you know. You don't need sugar when you have dates. On our cereal, we trained our children as they were growing up to put dates and raisins on their cereal. So they never asked us for sugar. They didn't even know what it was.
There's something in natural sugars that like you start eating candy bars and refined sweets, you want more and more and more. You know, it's hard to stop sometimes.
Right.
You know, there's kind of a natural thing that you just fill yourself up full, and you say it's a gagging reflex
They
or
call
something
that
like
the gag reflex.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
know-
very active with natural foods.
Yeah.
With honey, the Bible says, "Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled with it and vomit it."
Yes.
You actually cannot overeat of honey. It'll actually make you vomit.
When Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan, the 3 states, like 3 years ago, implemented the teaching of the reversion of the new dietary scale. So the 4 basic foods now, we have the inverted triangle with the grains on the bottom instead of meats and dairy products. And one of the things that they brought out in some of the surveys that they did and some of the opinions that they published in the news medias was that the milk and sugar combinations like custards and other things like this were probably one of the more detrimental food products that we were consuming. And I thought that was real strange because I'd never read that in print in these recent years, last 2 or 3 years ago. But the fact remains is the author that we quote quite often, Ellen White, back 100 years ago, made made those statements that those were not good combinations because of the fact that they would ferment and create indigestion and so on and so forth. And today we know that those things do that. See? So I thought it was kind of interesting now, after all this time has gone by, now we're seeing today a resurgence of information coming through the various publications telling us that these are not good combinations of food. See? So the sweets should be found in the fruit and the natural things that we eat rather than refined sugar. See? There's one called succonac. This is just sugar cane that is just dehydrated and granulated, but you can't call it sugar because it's not been refined. See? Sugar has to be 99.96% glucose, and succonac isn't anywhere near that. So you can use that. There's a lot of other things you can use for sugar instead of sugar.
I like to think about the Bible story, John, on Daniel and his 3 friends. You know, the Lord always honors the right, and these 3 Hebrew men were brought to Babylon, and for 10 days they were on a simple diet.
It's called pulse.
Pulse, yes, which was the legumes or the grains and fruit. And they were, after 10 days, they were tested, and they were smarter than all the other people that ate off the king's table who were, you know, allowed to eat the dainties and the rich meats and the probably alcohol and sugars and pastries and all that. These 3 Hebrew men didn't select any of those foods. They ate simple, plain food and water to drink, and they were smarter and wiser and brighter than the other, just in 10 days.
It's quite a lesson there.
It really is. It really is.
Also brings to mind, what's the text in Proverbs? Better is a dinner of herbs than a stalled ox with a hatred therein. Solomon must have knew those principles quite a bit also, perhaps. And where's water come into part with having a total balanced
Heaven's
life?
choicest blessing.
Yeah. How are we to use water?
If you stop and think that we're about 80% water, that they dehydrated us down, that's a lot of water. And so you have to keep replenishing that every day on a daily basis. And so 8 glasses of water should not be really that much of a problem. If you measured out how many liquids that folks are really drinking that are not water, you probably come pretty close to that in a lot of cases. You know, some people drink 4 or 5 cans of pop a day, or they'll have a dozen cups of coffee a day. I mean, we have folks come from the clinic that drink 15, 16 cups of coffee a day. And so we tell them they should have 8 glasses of water. They say, oh my, I never could drink 8 glasses of water. That'd be impossible. But they just told me they drank 15 cups of coffee. See, well, how about 15 cups of water? You see? It's just the fact we don't realize the value of water. Water is very important, both inside the body and outside the body. You know, a daily bath is equally important, too, because you keep the skin clean and the pores open and wash away the sweat that happens, you see, perspiration. So water is very important. It's one of the natural laws that we're supposed to be governed by. proper amount of water, proper amount of rest. See, these are the natural remedies that cost you nothing. See?
There's a statement here in this book, again, Diet and Foods, on page 301. It says, there are many ways of practicing the healing arts, but there is only one way that heaven approves. And it goes on to say, God's remedies are the simple agencies of nature that will not tax or debilitate the system. Pure air, sunlight, abstemiousness, rest, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine power, these are the true remedies.
Yeah, that seems to be a very good program. Where's rest come in? What do you recommend for how much rest people should get? There's this thing that we get our best sleep before midnight. How's that work?
Well, it is true. There's been a lot of studies on sleep, and one of the things that's brought out is that you have an endorphin positive force in your body that needs to be built up every day to help keep the immune system supported. And that endorphin buildup is the strongest, say, 2 or 3 hours before midnight. So if you should, those hours represent, in value, 2 hours after. 1 hour before midnight represents 2 after as far as value of sleep is concerned. So if you went to bed according to some of these countries that have no electricity, you'd be going to bed at 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, see? And you'd get that endorphin buildup so you could wake up feeling refreshed. Whereas if you're not going to bed until 12, 1 o'clock because you have your favorite program on TV or something else going, you know, then you're missing that. So rest is very important, very important.
No, here I am keeping late hours. I'm getting up. I don't feel good. And I have a shot of stimulant tea or a coffee, and it's setting up the whole foundation to live an unnatural lifestyle. What caffeine? What's caffeine do to the system?
Well, of course, caffeine we know is a stimulant to the nervous system. At the same time, it's also a relaxant. But the only problem is our nervous system can accept both, but it has a difficult time accepting both stimulations at the same time. See, we have our nervous system being divided up into the automatic nervous system that takes care of your digestion, called sympathetic nervous system, for your digestion down. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which puts on the brakes and says, well, now, whoa, we have to slow down here, see? If you get frightened, your heart will beat fast. Well, the parasympathetic kicks in and slows it down. Otherwise, you wouldn't stop beating so fast, you see? So caffeine stimulates both of these systems at the same time. That's what makes it confusing to the system, and makes it very addictive, see? So it's like a drug. It is an addiction. So we just say, well, just off the front, if you want to live healthily, well, of course, you can't have coffee and tea and alcohol and smoking and these things. These were, our body was never designed to handle those kind of things.
In your book, you talk about what caffeine it has detrimental effects to the heart, and you recommend what, peppermint tea or?
Well, chamomile tea and the various herbal teas. We have a whole section on herbs in the book, and that's been very popular. Matter of fact, we've come out with an herb slide chart. It gives you the use of all, like 36 herbs, and the various conditions they can be used for. And so you can do these things at home, you know, and take care of some of the needs you have in those departments. People are paying, millions of dollars today in just prescriptions to be able to sleep. See? And they're probably paying that many more just to take something to wake you up. So after a while, we'll have it all figured out so you don't have to worry about anything. If you got a problem, there's a pill for that. Just push the button and there it is. We're getting almost that complex.
It's not working.
But unfortunately, we don't need to be worried about those things if we get back to some natural lifestyle that's reasonable, practical. You know, we're not advocating a left field approach here. We're advocating something that can ride down the middle of the road, you see.
Yeah. As far as, so where's a person's doing all these things, they are eating well, they're exercising, they're using plenty of water, they're getting plenty of rest. Where does the mental, the spiritual part come into having a total healthy lifestyle? And
Well, I think there's a lot to that. I think our mental picture of how we address just the standard issues of life can be certainly complicated by a clouded mind. There's no question about that. And if we don't have a clear mind, and of course we know alcohol very definitely affects our perception of things, not just distance alone, but even the ability to think or give an answer. And so obviously anything that we're taking into our system that has that effect upon our thinking should be dispensed with. That's why one of the first things we tell you, that when you get on these natural foods and stop eating all these condiments that are stimulating, stop using alcohol, and stop smoking, and stop drinking, and all these other things, one of the first things that happens is your mind clears up, and you're able to think, and you're able to come to some kind of a peaceful resolution in life. I mean, you know, you don't have to be worrying and fretting and getting anxiety and taking some pills to control it. You see, we're not into that. And you won't be into that if you do this, what we're talking about here, advocating a natural lifestyle. You see, that won't be part of it. And I was going to just add to that. A lot of people are saying, well, how long does this take to get it turned around? You know, is it something that takes years and years and years, or can we see benefits today, in a few days, if we start doing some of these things? Well, the answer is yes. You will see benefits within days. Within days, it'll turn you around.
can an older person
Yes,
do
older
this?
people as well. As long as there's life and the blood is circulating, the heart's beating, there's a good possibility it'll change. See? And they found out in studies, there was a Dr. Price. He was a health officer to the government before World War II. This has been over 40 years ago. And he sent a team of 14 different teams around the world into what we call primitive lifestyle people, like these Hunza people, with one of them. See? And he put them on the American diet for a year, a certain number of them, and to be sure they were all right, they had physical examinations so that their overall health was good. And being a dentist, he wanted to be sure that they had good mouth and jaw formations and all that. And he noticed that on the American diet, which is consistently white flour, white sugar, refined oils, and all these things that they were eating, so he put them on those diets for a year. And the children born during that year, to all the groups, all the 14 from all over the world, all had the same problem. They immediately, those children born during that year and being followed up for 14, 20 years later, they exhibited some of the same problems we have in our country here today. They had diabetes, they had heart disease, they had different things. That after they went on back on their original diet, and then a year later had another child, that child was just like the rest of the children they had. They had no problems, no health problems. Even the ones born during that year even had cleft palate, club foot, and various other things. Jaw malformations and mouth being too narrow, couldn't hold all the teeth. And I mean, that's an experiment that tells us that what happens in a year of eating the wrong kind of food for the next generation. Now, we're always concerned about the next generation because who's going to follow this generation? You know, are we going to say, well, you know, I'm really happy with our country today. We're looking forward to seeing a better generation coming up. But we can't say that because we see all the health problems escalating. We see more medication being dispensed. We see more hospitals, that are handling cases of younger and younger people having the diseases of older people, you see. And so, you know, it is really a picture to look at that we don't like to look at. But these people that went through this study proved that in 1 year or more, there's that much can happen as an experiment. Now, the same thing can happen if you want to turn it all around. In a year, you can make a decided difference in how you feel. And I think there's a lot of people that have tried natural lifestyles and have been benefited just that fast. See, just by changing their diet alone. See? And so I think the time element here is not something we have to sit back and say, oh, this is going to take me forever. No, it won't do that. It's just in a few years you can be right up to where you want to be. See?
It's pretty fast.
Yeah.
A person can undo a lot of the damage. They can regenerate themselves.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
brings to mind a man in Canada who went through one of our lifestyle programs similar to the ones you promote. He could hardly even walk out to his mailbox, and he was 68 years old, and his friends and neighbors are saying, you've lived a good life, you worked hard, now it's time to sit back and take it easy, but he couldn't take it easy. He was so full of pain and aches, and he was just miserable. And he happened to be going to his doctor to get some drugs, and he noticed an All With Your, To Live With All Your Heart program by Dr. Hans Deal. And he took some courage that maybe it had something that he needed, and he went to it, and he and his wife, and he heard what they had to say. It made sense to him, and he decided he was going to do it. He did it radically. He threw out his cigarettes, he threw out his pop, he threw out his beer, he threw out his meat. He just bought a couple of fresh roasts the day before, a couple days before. He just threw them out. He says, "No more." And lo and behold, with about 3 weeks, he was gaining strength, and some of his aches and pains were going away.
Sure, absolutely.
And then by the end of the year, he's on his bicycle and riding 80 miles. And last I heard from reading the article that I read on it, he was planning to ride a bike across Canada at 69 years old,
Right.
after 2 years previously
Sure.
not being able to hardly even walk out to his mailbox. In fact, he couldn't walk out to his mailbox. He had to jump in the car, and it was hardly 100 yards.
Yeah.
And
Well, that just shows what can happen, see, when people do make those changes. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, it seems like a fairy tale too good to be true, but for you who may be joining us tonight, we recommend that you think about these things if you haven't. And it'll work. It'll work tremendously. And I've been fortunate to have come across these principles 20 years ago. When I was 20 years old, I came across Hurd's books, and I still feel like I'm 20. I don't have any aches or pains, or I know I'm looking a little older than 20 now, but hopefully wiser. Sometimes I have to question that, but it's amazing. So, in wrapping up, what, in a nutshell, what can you suggest a person consider in being happy and prospering and being in good health? If what cooking, preparation, I mean, what's the key? It's kind of a total program.
I would say the Lord desires us to prosper and be in health, John, and there's He gives us an abundant supply of these gifts, free gifts. Fresh air, sunshine is free, you know. Good food is so abundant. And we need to try it. And we'll find out that it pays. It pays off. You'll feel better. You'll have more endurance. You'll be more alert.
I think one of the problems that we have to really seriously look at, today especially, and that is we need to be thinking in terms of taking responsibility for our health. In other words, we ought not be coming up with the idea that if I get sick, I can go to the doctor. It's important to go to the doctor when you're sick. There's no question about that. But don't rely upon that philosophy to be a barometer of healthful living. See? Take the responsibility that you can do something for yourself, like eating good food. You may have to take some supplements. You may have to do some number of things. But you can do that by being more well-read. Get some books about health. Get some books about some of the diseases that we're suffering from, cancer and diabetes, and know what is some of the causes of these things. And work out in your own lifestyle so that, work on it to the point where you are in control of your life. It's your life, you see. And so then when you need something, you may not have that need so frequently, you see, and things can be done much more easily for you. And so I think getting into a philosophy of assuming responsibility for your own health is what I'd advocate of all the things that need to be done in your life. That would be where you start. If you don't start there, you're not going to start at all. Okay.
Old saying, health is wealth, and it's the biggest blessing.
Yeah.
You know, you can be poor, but if you've lost your health, I mean, if you can be well off, you know, have a big bank account and have many things of material possession, but if your health's not there, it's kind of
You have
vain.
nothing really.
That's right.
It's kind of vain, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we could talk about these things today.
Well, we can be here today and share a few things.
And as far as if any who are watching today want to know more of these programs and books and so forth that we've been talking about, just call us here at MCAT, and we'd be more than happy to share with you further. And we thank you for watching in on us, and till next time, hopefully in the next week or two, we'll be bringing you some more of these programs. Thank you.